All right. So, welcome back to the CNU Survivor Aftershow. I'm your host Alex here with Lily, and tonight we're going to be discussing episode 5. We're going to discuss that double tribal. We had a weird challenge for you guys,
You mean a
and
psychology experiment?
yeah, and we'll definitely see how the challenge implemented, whether both tribes went to tribal. I mean, it was actually very psychological tonight, or in the episode. It was crazy.
Some of the players had to think more than they've thought the entire game. It was pretty
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. I mean, there were some interactions definitely that we have not seen the entire game
Hmm.
so far, which was quite interesting for me, at least. So, Nick, he kind of feels responsible for the blind side of Abby, and he's kind of thinking, "Oh, maybe I should have told Sophie about this."
Great
'Cause
power comes great responsibility. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I think it's sweet to see that there are some people that wouldn't blink twice about pulling off a move like that. And, credit where credit's due. He pulled off a move like that. And I think it's not only getting him attention that he doesn't want, and he's right to kind of back down and be humble about it, but I think ultimately it was a smart move. And I think he was very sweet and honest and apologetic to Sophie right at the tribal that we saw in this episode, where he addressed it and said it was a fishy thing to do. And I was like, yeah. But
yeah,
I think Sophie, in her own ways, kind of knew, like, yeah, I know why they did it. Doesn't help that it happened, but
yeah, because like Nick even pulled Sophie at the challenge even to try to like discuss about it. Like it wasn't anything against you; it
yeah.
was just against her. And they wanted her to be closer to
And it
them.
was, it was interesting just to see that tidbit of Colin Ray's reaction to being like, this is what happens when you are known to be even friends outside, let alone dating. So it was kind of an interesting, like, scare for them, like a sign of what could come for them for their relationship if it was revealed. So that was interesting.
Yeah. So you guys show up to the challenge, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
you're saying like in this lecture hall, you see one immunity necklace like on the table or whatever, and Trevor's like, don't move. If anyone wants to grab the immunity necklace, go ahead and grab it. But but
But
if you, but there's always that one but. If you get the immunity necklace, your tribe also goes to tribal, and the other tribe is safe, and vice versa. So it was weird. Who was gonna be more important because they were on the bottom of their tribe? Could have possibly saved themselves.
I think
Or
Henry was a quick pick on our part just because uh, I think Tafiti, the newly branded Tafiti, we were kind of
yeah,
saying, as Henry was the sole blue crew over there, it was kind of, he felt like an outsider, especially seeing the perspective from his perspective how scattered. It was interesting to see that he was the single vote for Sophie, and when it was the votes for Abby and then votes for Henry. So I think it was interesting to see that he really didn't go with any plan. I don't know if he went with like an old plan, but that knowing you were the single vote that had no correlation whatsoever means you were not in the loop. It means you weren't necessarily the target, but kind of a pawn. It doesn't make you feel great. So
yeah, because you saw people like pretty much Hannah and Maggie were pretty much all blue crew. Let's do this. Maybe you could
I was
go
sad
ahead.
watching them going over. It's so
Yeah,
easy. I think anytime it was very noticeable when anybody broke off in a group, and it was fun, 2 years later to see what was actually being said in those break off conversations, how they came together, why they came together, and what they talked about when they were there. And to Hannah's credit, much as this editing really loves, I mean, maybe we were at each other's throats, but apparently, like, I think it was kind of a battle of the matriarch in a way, kind of the strong females of both sides of the team. And for all of Hannah's being like, oh, I'm so mad at her for throwing my name out. It's like, you throw my name out. Like, you're doing the same thing. And so calling the kettle black a little bit, but it was interesting, I think, despite whatever tension is brewing amongst the matriarchs, where when she was pulled by the mystery gang, because they said she was the most approachable or whatever, most easy to tell their plan to. She was like, yeah, right, and give you guys a free pass this week. Like, bye. And I was like, okay, respect, but it was, people tried a lot of things.
Yeah, because it was funny, because like, especially on your tribe, pretty much everyone wanted Leah kind of in their plan for your tribe.
And watching it now, I didn't realize how noticeable it didn't. I didn't hear it. It wasn't. I mean, it was mentioned, but not too much after the fact. That Shaggy and I like chatted for like just that one moment where Hannah came back and filled everybody in. And from Hannah's perspective, it was like, oh well, they just didn't care what happened. But whatever. Like, I mean, it was interesting to. I think at the time I felt comfortable enough just to be talking, and we were just kind of like, and it wasn't like we had gotten up and to talk. We were just kind of sitting next to each other, dangling our legs, waiting. Maybe we should have, been like, oh, hey, the group is talking, let's go over there, because Henry did that. I noticed when Nick and Sophie went to the corner, that was a sneaky. I remember being in the room and seeing him dart up, and I'm like, interesting. Because from an outside perspective, you can see when two people are talking because they want to talk, and then somebody runs up and they change their demeanor, like, oh, we weren't just talking about you, but hey, Nick pointed it out in his confessional, like that we were talking about him, and it's a good thing he came. It was smart on his move because we were going to talk about him, and so that's kind of sometimes that's how you got to play the game, just being part of the room.
It was like, if we lose, let's just get rid of Henry. He was the easy vote. We kind of wanted him out last time. And
that was kind of the bittersweet, or the trade-off with the conditions of winning and taking the idol, or the consequences, is that even if you as a tribe say, well, any one of us can grab it because we already know who we're going to go for, and it'll be an easy vote. Well, there's still the fact that if it's inevitable, if you feel good about your tribal plans and the other team, don't let them get off scot-free in the meantime. So I think the only danger to that plan for Mystery was, and there was a little moment where Colin Ray was like, I mean, I'm not going to grab it, but if Henry makes a go for it, then I will grab it, so I think that was kind of, because that was their contingency plan. So if contingency plan grabs the idol, then they're double effed.
Yeah, because it's like, even if Henry's immunity, he's still probably going to be left out of the vote again. His position in the game doesn't get any stronger if he takes it.
Yeah.
You could just rather just make at least a little bit of friends while I'm here, and not make any more enemies I already have. I'm not I don't have the numbers. I'm not with my original tribe.
It is interesting to see the OG Blue Crew dynamics because, they were a strong team. And Henry got the short end of the stick, being the only one on the other side. But beyond that, it was interesting to see how the Maggie, Gabe, and Hannah carried over to when it was time for our tribal. They automatically like, okay, we're Blue Crew, and but numbers wise, we need one more. And that was, at least for our tribe, the theme of that episode was the 4. Like, take a shot every time you hear the number 4, because it's all about that 4th power. There's nobody was in a position to be splitting votes. It was 4 against 3. The swing vote, Colin. I think it's funny. Hannah was so pissed off about the swing vote, and it's like, but are you really that surprised? It's not like, of course he's not going to assume he's allied with you. Like, you're barely talking to him now, and of course he's a hot commodity, and he's reveling in it. He's letting you know he has options. But she was like, swing vote, he's not automatically loyal to me. It's like, I mean,
like, come on, Hannah. Like
now you choose to bring the Blue Crew into this, and And that
It's
was
like
they were trying to be all blue crew, but they originally tried to bring Leah in as the fourth instead of. It's like
instead of Bun, because they knew Bun had a relationship with Shaggy before coming into the game. So it's like Leah I think Leah would be better off for Bun because Bun is just gonna be wishy washy. I feel like the entire game.
Well, then when it came to Leah and that right after the challenge, they pulled Leah aside, that I guess I did know about that because Leah later told me. But watching it and hearing her, originally I was like I didn't know she was against me and not oh wow. But then I even fell for it. And the whole time she was doing it for me, she laid it on a little thick, I think, about oh yeah, Lily's she's what I wrote some quotes down. She was saying, yeah, we're set. So Gabe was committing oh yeah, we're set on Lily, right? And then Leah was like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to get her out from the beginning, but the others wanted to keep her because she's a team player, but she's not. She's very strategic, and I think she hides it well.
Yeah.
I don't like it, and I think it was it disgusts me or something. I was just like, oh.
It's like Gabe out of nowhere decides this, in which I think he's just going right along with what Hannah is saying, and he's just saying he's just
until 20 minutes later, me being in my confessional, being like, my girl, oh Leah, she gave me all the deets, and I was like, okay, we're good, because that is what happened. She did come right to me, and she was like, and we were right back to the whole. I think I'm already nostalgic about being in the Santora lounge, and she was just spilling all the tea and oh yeah, and they said this, and then you'll never get this. They actually tried to get me to what, even she was like, they gotta know better that we are, I don't know. I think, and we just kind of played on that idea that Shaggy and I, it's not too far off because Shaggy and I were really tight together, but we were very open and communicative with, it was a forum when we met. It wasn't Shaggy and I and, oh, we'll bring you two along. The Pinky Pact, I think, was really a matter of 4 equals. And that is ultimately, both Leah and Colin had to decide that episode to side with us, because both of them were I need to choose who I'm going forward with. And while I think it sounds like Leah was way more committed to it, because even in that moment, she was planning ahead and setting seeds. I think for a moment Colin was actually considering it, because he said in his confessional, I have to decide who I want to go ahead with. So really watching this back now, it's it could have gone so many ways, but we ultimately, I think, our alliance just was so much more. I think the Pinky Pact, I talked last time about how the nostalgia or the kid-like innocence of the Pinky Pact, it's so fragile, but it's kind of I think that's something that Hannah as a player is she's super cutthroat and strong and will get what needs to be done, but she's not too into, compadres, buddy, and let me I just saw the difference of how when they met, it was very like, yes, and I think this and I think that. And then right before the vote, we were like crushed into a booth and we were like, okay, tell us the tea. Like, you know, we were all having fun with it. And I think that's just, it makes the difference.
Yeah, because this was like their first tribal council, so I don't think they really talked any game up to this point. And so really they're just like, heck, we're here. Let's just work together, I guess, you know, and just see what crumbs that we could pick up or something. And I don't think that we're too. I mean, we're at the fifth tribal.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these decisions in the game of who you're going to align with are made early on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was a part of the problem. So when they were stuck there, they were just thinking, oh, we have tribe advantages, but now you don't. And now we're kind of just looking for numbers so that we could just cut them out later.
And that was always when we first got assigned to Peptali, like just looking around, it was, you know, on paper, it was 4 against 3, but they made a big mistake making Colin Bunn feel not a part of the team from the get-go like that. And that's what I'm saying about this idea of like taking the alliance beyond, like, sometimes I think it's my downfall, but also in a case like this, it worked. Is I wear my heart on my sleeve. I want to get coffee with you and like talk to you about life and class. And I think for me, it's an alliance is like in a way, I don't want to sound like a manipulative by saying this, but like
Yeah.
exchanging personal stories makes you so much more invested. And it's not like I just like harvest their secrets so I can like hold it against them. It's
Yeah.
helps me like get to feel like I trust them and I kind of know them. And I think that is a huge important part. And for the like 100% when you're playing on an island, that definitely comes into play because a lot of times we on College Survivor we only meet when we have to meet, and when we meet we're like we have 10 minutes before we have to run off to a class, so like we can only really talk business. And so I think it's definitely a lot harder to form those connections when you're such a concentrated version of like just little bits of where you can get it. And on an island, you're living with them. Like they're gonna know your whole life story by the time you're done because you're
Yeah.
just sitting around a campfire or like looking at a tree. So I think that is a difference.
Yeah, because especially in the Survivor community, you want to be friends with people outside of the game, and I'm like, just like some of the friends, that you could take away from the season. You're like, that backstab is going to be a lot harder to have later on in the game if you can emotionally detach from these people just outside of gameplay, get to know them a lot more.
Mhm.
It just makes it a lot more difficult on them to want to blindside you.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I was just remembering one thing, kind of jumping back to earlier in the episode, because I was just thinking about Sophie and how when she was doing her confession, it was in regs, I think, and it was Miley Cyrus "Wrecking Ball" was playing in the background.
yeah.
And I said, I mean, I understand these are not the most like ideal recording conditions, but
Yep.
kind of worked because she was like,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, they really played me. I can't even like it again. And I was like, woo!
I'm like that had to be like the perfect music
It was
at
her
that
inner,
right
it was
time.
definitely going through her mind, yeah.
Yep. I'm like, seriously, that's just insult to injury. Like you're
Fuel to the fire.
yeah, for sure. So it was pretty much the foursome of you, Shaggy, Leah, and whoa, and Bun, pretty much deciding who are you gonna take out on the rest of the blue crew between
Mhm.
Hannah, Maggie, and Gabe.
Mhm.
And it was quite interesting why you guys decided to choose Maggie instead of Hannah or Gabe, which was quite interesting.
Hindsight's 2020, but at the end of the day, I mean, my instinct was right. Hannah did have the idol. And I mean,
Yeah.
for her to not have played it, she had to have been very confident. And her instinct was right too, because we weren't confident and I don't know what she thought we were gonna do. They definitely didn't think we were gonna go for Maggie, so I think we made a smart move in there because it's like expect the unexpected. Like, we played on like we knew that this, as Shai said, it was a make or break moment.
Mm-hmm.
And number wise, it was like, okay, and that goes back to the whole idea of the fragile pinky pact. All four of us need to be a strong front. And there can be no exceptions. All four of us have to vote for the same person. And that person has to not play an idol or have an idol played for them. And then that person goes out, and then we move on to the next round, which is 4 and 2. And then we're in a much better position to split votes and deal with that idol if it should come later. So I think in at the time it was kind of we just need to get past this round and feel that was the most confident we could have felt. And it did what we needed to do. Yes, it would have been a great time to take out Hannah now that I know that she didn't play her idol. And it would have been a very different game. But at the game we were looking at the time, it was just we couldn't take that risk because if we chose poorly or if an idol was played, regardless of if it was Hannah or Gabe, again, that's why we chose Maggie, because we knew an idol wouldn't be played for her. So that
Yeah.
was
Because otherwise it would have been you going home instead.
it would have been me going home, and then it would have, it could have just gone, then everybody else in the Pinky Pack would be screwed as well. Because it would be revealed that they voted with me. So then that trust would be broken, and then it would just kind of further.
Yeah, because then that tribe would have been 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
And then it would have been haywire.
I mean, we'll see in the next episode, not to spoil it too much, but we walked away, the four of us walked away from that tribal like, whew, like it worked. We made it. And it's like, we kind of got a little giddy. We were like, well, I was never planning to throw a challenge, but we were considering it. We were like, we know what we want to do. And I think because we knew we were getting close to the merge. So we can talk about that more next time. But I think it really started that moment, like just started like excitement, and it was a big moment, make or break moment.
Yeah. And then for the Mystery Gang tribal, which I found that was weird, considering that Henry was not the person going home, and the four decided to go against each other, and they're deciding to work with Henry instead of who they've been working with this entire time in Addie to go home, which I found quite interesting. I mean,
I can't say I'm 100% sure why they did what they did, but from the game perspective in that moment, I could imagine maybe it was an idea of, well, Henry seems like a lone. Henry has played the entire game as kind of a lone wolf, and that makes him kind of a tempting ally because he has no alliances or allegiances, and that makes him good to work with but easy to get rid of. So I think it was kind of Addie was maybe more personal or personable, and that might mean sentiment would get involved later on, not to make it sound so cold, but like I guess he's a little bit more likable, and I think he'd have an easier time getting people to want to keep him in long term, and I think he's not to be overlooked as a player. He poses the same physical threat, I think, as Henry does, but I think it from my perspective, I didn't play too much with both of them, but I saw them enough in action to know between the two personalities, I think, going with Henry would have been more of a evil versus evil you don't know, kind of like.
Yeah. Just like, I know this person, I've been with him the entire game, rather than somebody who I just met like 2 tribals ago. It's like, come on. Like,
and again, same reason that we did what we did. Sometimes you do the unexpected because then they don't have time to react or to make a counter plan. So that's kind of where these blindsides come from, is the only way to really feel like there's no alternate possibility is the reason why we did what we did and voted Maggie, because even though it wasn't getting out the biggest target, we knew we would be safe that week if we went with that there was no chance of the idol being played, and there was no, it's just kind of, if you can all agree, that's at this point in the game, and I think that's what happened with Colin Ray when Abby got voted out, because he wanted to work with Abby, and he got kind of blindsided right before they were like, okay, we're changing it to Abby, and he was like, maybe Sophie, and they're like, no, Abby, and he's just kind of had to be like, I can't go against it. And it's sometimes if somebody just throws out a name, and I think that was so funny that they mentioned it so briefly, that kind of the catalyst for all of this happening was me, because they were all talking, and apparently like Addie went to make a joke with me, and then Nick just went Addie like right in front of him, and I was the distraction, and I had nothing to do with that, and I don't even remember what happened. Just I know that that's kind of who Addie is as a person, so I feel a little bad about that. But also like, that was smooth on Nick's part to like, whoa, like and it worked, it happened. But that was such a little like, dang, smooth operator.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy how Nick is just making move after move so smoothly when no one really kind of going against them because like Kristen hasn't really been doing much this game really so far, nor has Sophie. So I think it'll be interesting to see when
I think Sophie learned her lesson a little bit, and I think because I remember her really taking the lead on how the last she tried to take the lead, but she ended up getting blindsided. And I think a part of that was her being like realizing that she didn't have the control she thought she had and kind of backing off. Not only because she was like, my closest ally just got voted out. Like, she was a little shell-shocked, and I don't blame her. And I think that's kind of why I think she took a little bit of a step back, being like, I don't want to rub anybody the wrong way. I'm in a very precarious position. And also why I think with Kristen, you're right that I don't hear much from her, which it's not the worst strategy. But it's kind of interesting to hear, even when what tells me the most about these people, and I didn't have the privilege of that information while I was playing, but now that I hear what they say in confessionals, that tells me what kind of person they are, because there's a difference to what you say to everybody else when you're being watched and listened and versus you just talking to Trevor or talking to the camera and being like, these fools, they're crazy. Like, it's, you get to just totally be, because even Shaggy in this episode said at one moment, like, I need to decide who's a bigger threat, Hannah or Lily. And I thought we were past this at the time, what I would have done, but he was still having those thoughts. And of course, good on him that he's thinking about that. But of course, now I'm like, why don't you trust me? Just like
just one time. Yeah, because it was weird because like I think Hannah's more worried about being two power couples. Let's get out the other power couple out so that we're the only power couple still in the game and no one knows my strategy.
I think that is such a funny thing because even my mom pointed out when we were watching, I think 2 episodes ago during Tribal, like I was holding Shaggy's hand and she was like, were you guys a thing? And I'm like, no. But I do think it was, I don't know. I think it's funny that we're both theater people because I think that makes us very vulnerable right away and comfortable with each other. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of, we were very similar people with very similar backgrounds, and I think that brought us together really quickly. Apparently not close enough. He was still having doubts, but I think that I will separate that as the game moved. He of course ended up making the right choice, but the fact that he was still even thinking about it, I think it shows what a good player he was, and thinking that it's dangerous. I think it was ultimately worth it. I think that's why he made the choice he did of staying with me. Not that it was a hard choice, I hope, but it was still a thought. I think it's just this idea of, keep your friends close, your enemies closer. And even if he allied himself with me as the ride or die, like ultimately, game-wise, as much as great as it is to take your ride or die to the final, if they're more of a, as Hannah said, powerhouse than you, and I think thankfully he never got put in that position. But it was kind of who knows what would have happened if, it's weird how things change from phase to phase, the group think, and then there's the individual, and getting up to the merge, you start thinking there's just such a interesting shift of priorities.
Yeah, because it's like, who can I beat in a challenge on this specific one, or who can I be at the end? It's just,
there's kind of a pecking order of who you want to take out, because at first you want to take out the people that won't help you win challenges, or not pulling their weight, because then if you at that point the strategy is don't go to Tribal. If you're not a Tribal, you're not going home, because even if you go to Tribal, there's always, Trevor asks it a lot, Jeff Probst asks it a lot, does anyone here think they are truly safe tonight? Or raise your hand if you think you have a chance of going home. And it's kind of like, if you're the person that says, oh, I'm totally not going home, it's kind of like, oh, he's too comfortable, and, they get voted off.
Yeah, that's just a blindside waiting to happen.
It's just kind of, I think this is everybody, it's true. It's not a play. Like, we've seen it happen one too many times, and we know enough people have watched and know how these things work, that it can happen, and it does happen, and it has happened. And so it's kind of this, that's what went into, again, why we voted out Maggie, because we were like, it could happen, it might not happen, but it could happen. So let's make sure, like, we just do it so that we get past this point. And I think it's just that every week is a different priority. Of course, every week you're just making the strategy to get to the next week, at least. You know, it's a luxury to be able to think, like, as easy as it could have been in that moment to vote out my biggest competition, that would have been a luxury, kind of a luxury I couldn't afford at the time, that I had to put, you know, get to the next week and not risk it. Because it's, even though I could have gotten her out, I didn't know that. So
yeah, it's like, let's just wait till the next challenge. Let's just win this. Maybe we can get her out, you know, maybe first boot after the merge or something. Well, we'll have to wait and see till what happens next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is gonna be crazy. Thanks you all for tuning in. Please leave a like, subscribe, and tune in next week for the episode 6 after show. Have a good night, y'all.
Good night.
All right.